and welcome to Conversations with Reverend G. I am Reverend Grenetta Mason, aka Reverend G, and I'm here every Monday night bringing you conversations with guests from all walks of life with varying perspectives. We come together and we share our stories, we share resources, we come together and we talk about life, we talk about love, and we also talk about spirituality. And we talk about spirituality from a practical point of view. How does it support you in your everyday life? What practices are your go to practices? We talk about spirituality from a perspective of having a spiritual toolkit. What things are in your spiritual toolkit that support you when you need clarity, when you're in a crisis, when you need just a pick me up? My guests, they talk about their stories, they share any resources that they have, and we do this in hopes that we can inspire you and support you. There's so much going on in the world today that we are very sure that in practicing some of these spiritual practices, you can find some comfort. And my goal is to support you in finding joy and living your best life with grace and ease. You can find me every day on Facebook with inspirational messages to support you in getting through your day. I'm on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason. I'm on Instagram as Rev Grenetta. I'm excited tonight because I have a very special guest. My guest tonight is Ronald Petaway. He is an ESOL teacher, which is his second career, and he has been a higher education administrator for many, many years. Hey, Mr. Petaway. I call him Mr. Petaway, right? That's how we I worked with him for so many years. I work with you, so it's like interesting that first thing out was Mr. Petaway. You're gonna call me Rev G. How you gonna call me? What
Whatever be your pleasure.
no, no.
I like Rev G.
Yeah, okay, whatever's comfortable for you, right?
But I think your audience should know that we didn't work together. You were actually my boss at one point.
Yeah. Okay, all right. We have to go there, right? I was at one point. So I always call it though. I always try to work as it's a collaborative effort.
Mhm.
Whenever I'm the boss, I try to make it like very collaborative. But it was a very interesting time, and I'm still at the MEOC, and I've been there for 10 years. And the 10 years, there's been like a whole wave of up and down, right? And
Mhm.
it's interesting. You have 33 years. Was all of that at the community and the MEOC?
Yes, the great majority of that was at the MEOC. Actually, I in the state office building where MEOC is. I spent the first 3 years as the chief of staff of a city councilman named Fred Samuel. And I kind of found out about EOC because I was talking to other constituents who needed educational opportunities. And so I went up to explore, and I met a fellow there who was instrumental in helping me to get into EOC. And I had fun there for the last 33 years.
Wow, I keep saying wow, it seems like a long time, but I say that because I came to the MBOC in something like 1984 and 85, and that
Mhm.
was like a long time ago for me, right? Then I left and I came back. It's interesting the story of you started in the state office, but I know you went to Morehouse and you majored in journalism. How did you get from Morehouse journalism to
Wow.
MEOC and
You
how
know,
yeah.
that was a long road. Actually, when the how I got to Morehouse
Mhm.
might be interesting. I was a kid hanging out in at Abyssinian in the youth council and playing around. And I had a little mailroom clerk job. And Reverend Bucks just got out of New York Theological Seminary, and he was our youth minister. And about a year into his tenure there, he looked at me and said, "You know, what are you going to do with your raggedy life?" Beg your pardon. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm having fun. I got a job and I'm hanging out.
Mhm.
And he convinced me to go to Morehouse. And I got down there with like $13 in my pocket and was wondering what in the heck I was doing there. But eventually I made it out. But when I first got there, I started out as a music major.
Mm.
And I quickly learned that there were at least 100 other music majors who were more talented than I,
Mm.
and they weren't making a whole lot of money. And I said, maybe that's not for me.
Mm.
And at that time, I know I'm name dropping a little bit, but Spike Lee had was attending Morehouse. This was his last year, and they just had opened a journalism program at Morehouse.
Mhm.
And he was loud and proud and just a very outgoing fellow. And that attracted me to the journalism program, and I joined it there.
Mhm.
Fortunately, I graduated Morehouse by the skin of my teeth.
Mm.
And a friend of mine who was working for the campaign of Fred Samuel said that he was looking for somebody to help him with the newsletters and other material like that. So I applied and I wound up as his chief of staff for the New York, the Uptown office. And that's how I got there.
And the MELC was upstairs on the 15th floor. What a story, right? That it was there. And I remember when I got there because I was looking for a part-time job, right?
Hmm.
And I was able to, they were like as an adjunct. And
Mhm.
because my skills were in computers, they had just started the computer
Right.
training there, right? And so I worked there for like 10 hours a week with the first laptops. At first, we had this big IBM computer, and I was teaching
Yeah.
them. And then we
I
got it.
remember that. Yeah.
So that was way back. Look at me, I say way back, right? Because my daughter is 40 years old, so it feels way back, right?
Mhm.
To me, that that and I love the NBOC because it's been standing for so long and what it stands for, and we are in the community. So every chance I get, I look to promote the programs because when we look at our community, and I know now that you've retired, I'm jumping all around, you out there in the community, but when I look at the community and the offerings that we have, I just can't believe why people aren't running to sign up. Right?
That has been an ongoing issue at MEOC for a very long time because we wondering as we go out recruiting in the community and offering these free programs, and I can't tell you how many times I mentioned free as a recruiter at MEOC at one point,
Mm.
and it was amazing to me why people wouldn't sign up immediately. But it seems to be the kind of thing that somebody had told me some time ago that, if you mention that it's free, they feel that it might not be worth their time and effort to come there. And I just can't understand it. And what amazes me is the number uh, of our people, and when I say our people, I'm talking about people who were not born in the United States who come to the program and do very well after they graduate. It's amazing to me that more people don't take advantage of it.
Yeah, I remember, and I think about it, and I think about a time when we did have a large number of students come in,
Mhm.
right? When we did seem to attract, and I'm trying to think what was happening then and what's different now. And I know that we saw a decline pre-COVID, right? And particularly, I know that now, how did you transition into being an ESOL teacher? This is your second career. So how did you talk about going from retirement, right, which we could talk about what that looked like, right, to taking up a second career?
You know,
Right?
is very interesting that you said it because the day that I retired, I had this wonderful plan of traveling and doing wonderful things and saying, this is my time and I'm going to study my music and I'm going to learn more things. And I found that maybe 6, 7 weeks into retirement, I was sitting on the couch and I found that I was spending like 4 or 5 hours, and it's sad to say, but I'm going to say it,
Mhm.
watching a lot of Judge Judy.
That's
And
right. Shoot.
I watched my wife walk back and forth with her arms folded to say, "Is that all you're going to do with your life? Is sit on the couch?" So I had to find something else to do. And fortunately, there was this wonderful program that was being offered to train people to teach English as a second language to adults. And I took that training for about 4 months. Did a internship at one of the local libraries in the area in Queens,
Mhm.
and got hired maybe 6 months later as a part-time teacher. And it has been very, very fruitful for me in the sense that I get to do something that I thoroughly enjoy teaching.
Mhm.
And the students are so grateful to have somebody who wants to take the time out to teach them how to speak English.
Do you speak another language?
You know, that question is always asked if, when you're an ESL teacher. Remember, they're there to learn English. They're not there to learn another
I
language.
know. I'm just curious. So
But
I
no,
always
you
think
don't have to
that
speak.
though.
You don't have to speak another language.
Okay, because they need to understand you. I know that's one of those questions that most people ask, right? But I always think, okay. But
Mhm.
I think that's great because I think I read that you always were interested in working with the economically and educationally underserved. Um, in your community, what as a part of the library, is that how you get involved in the community work? What other community things are you doing?
Um, you do have the opportunity. One of the things I found out about the Queens Public Library in
Mhm,
particular is
mhm,
that it is the center of cultural education and information. They have job opportunities, not just books and movies and things of that nature, but different training programs, different
mhm,
entertainment programs. You bring your kids there to learn to read and to get
mhm,
entertained, jazz
mhm.
programs. It's just a plethora of interesting things that happen at the library. And I have been very, very fortunate in working with some people, very bright people at the library, because,
Mhm.
you always think of librarians as very quiet individuals with their big round glasses with their head stuck in books all day long. But it has opened my eyes to a number of things. Actually, as a matter of fact, just started to do yoga with some of the librarians there at 8 o'clock in the morning, which is interesting.
Yeah. What I was going to say is that's interesting because if we think of technology and books and people not going to the library, students not needing to necessarily have books, what the library seems to have become is a community center now, right?
Yeah.
Or and it's like, oh, bring back the library, right? But it appears that it had to have a new strategy and a new way to really attract people back to the library. So that's interesting that the libraries still do exist,
Mhm.
and in a way that they still serve the community. I guess
Mhm.
that's what I would say, because it's very different. People don't necessarily go pick up. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm thinking that people don't go rent books, but I have heard that some people do, right? You go rent books, right?
That is true. That is true. They do come to get books every now and again.
Yeah, okay, right. So that's what I'm thinking, right? So that's pretty cool because, when we think, like as you said about retirement, when we think about retirement, like you say, you had the big plans of the traveling, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I'm still functioning, right? What am I gonna do, right?
Indeed.
Right, and I think about that also because I could still be a contribution at the job, right? So why
Mhm.
retire, right? When I could still do that and still
Mhm.
live my best life as I am doing, right?
Mhm.
So it is, when we talk about retirement, it's our perspective on it. What does it look like? What does it mean to us to retire? Talked about music. Talk about your career as you're a musician, singer. I know you sang in choirs. We did some little choir stuff together, right?
Yes.
Are
Yes.
you still singing? And what was your music? Because you went down there at Morehouse to major in music, right? Had you been in choirs or?
Yes. Actually, I was in the I grew up in Abyssinian since I was about 17, and I
Oh,
think
okay.
I've been in every choir that Abyssinian has, from the youth singers to what they termed as the senior choir, which is now the chancel choir, I believe.
Mhm.
So my tenure at Abyssinian, I thought that I had this wonderful talent, and I think some other people thought that I had this wonderful talent. So I took it to Morehouse and joined the music program there and sang in the Morehouse College Choir, which was a wonderful, wonderful experience. It took me to the choir itself took me to the four corners of the United States, and unfortunately, I graduated too soon because right after I graduated, they got a chance to go over to Africa and visit
Mm,
the Caribbean, and I
mm,
said, "Oh man, I need to go back and go to school." But anyway, it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. I don't sing as much as I used to. There is a choir that I participate in called the Ebony Ecumenical Ensemble. Every now and again, when I have the chance to go to their rehearsals.
mhm,
Um, so that's how I kind of keep in touch with things
mhm.
musically. But other than that, nah, not too
That-
much of music inclination anymore.
So, I want you grew up in Abyssinia, and I know Reverend Butts just recently passed, right?
Yes.
Um, what's the impact of that? And are you, because you're close in there as one of the people that grew up there? What do you see as the impact? Is it too soon to see that? Do you see anybody emerging as this type of leader that he was in the community? Is that going to come from the church?
Well, unfortunately I'm a little biased in that regard because I don't know if there is such a leader as Reverend Butts. I've kind of watched him grow up in Abyssinian to become this fabulous leader who always had a down to earth attitude with the people that he was in contact with. It's interesting. I think the sometime in June, if I remember correctly, we asked Reverend Butts to come and join this little group of people who kind of grew up with him, and we took him out to lunch at the chocolate restaurant on 8th Avenue or Frederick Douglass Boulevard.
Mhm.
And we were talking about old times and the good times and about our lives, and it was just a joy to see this powerful man of Harlem, who hangs out with all these big shots, and it was just nice to see him being very, very comfortable, even though he was in the midst of his illness at that point. But was really caught my eye is that after we got up and we were about to leave the restaurant, I know the local, for lack of a better term, I'll say numbers runner,
Mhm.
came up to him and shook his hand, and he knew him from the time, sometime in the past, and all of these local people would come up to him, and he would take the time to speak with them. So he was a very, very important person, not only to what I call the big shots of New York. And he could hold his own, and not only with New York, but with the state and nationally. Uh,
Mhm.
but he always took the time out to help those individuals who were in need at the local level. I can tell you there are at least a million stories where people from the neighborhood, from Harlem, and from New York in general would come to his office and need something, and he would try his best to help them when he had the time to do it. If he
Mhm.
couldn't do it, he would delegate it to someone who could possibly help the individual. And I've heard, I can't tell you how many testimonials I've heard of people who said if it wasn't for him, that they don't know if they could have survived here in New York. So, and I certainly am one of those cases, because if it wasn't for him, there was no way that I would be able to get to Morehouse and to have the kind of idealism in my and this and take the spiritual journey that I have taken without his modeling that experience for me.
Well, that's interesting because I like for people to share their spiritual journey. So you led right into taking that spiritual journey. What was your spiritual journey? Share that with us.
Oh wow.
Mhm.
It's kind of eclectic. I certainly I landed as a down home Baptist, but I don't know if that was. I'll start out by saying my first encounter
Mhm.
with God was growing up as a young kid in um, first in Harlem and then in Queens. Most of my youth was in Queens. And any time that I had some difficulty or some trial, I just kind of closed my eyes. And at that time, I had no label for
Mhm.
the spiritual journey. I just said, and I more than likely probably got it from my Catholic grandmother
Mhm.
and my Baptist mother, who somehow spoke it into my consciousness about what
Mhm.
the spiritual journey is, and mix those two together and try to find some way to relieve the struggle or the pain that I was in. And whenever I did it, it seemed to I seemed to be lifted in that regard, and was able
Mhm.
to continue on my journey. But somehow I found my way to Abyssinian, and the reason I found my way to Abyssinia is because I met a couple of girls who were going there, so that's how I wound up at Abyssinia. But
Mhm.
in that
That's how you
journey,
felt.
um, I,
Mhm.
I found that not only, and I'm dating myself now, but at that time, Adam Clayton Powell was there, and his fiery um, sermons kept me riveted there. And then Butts eventually came on the scene, and he was a young dude coming out of Union Theological Seminary with this new idea of uh,
Mhm.
termed as radical religion, and we like that. And I think everything that he said and did um,
Mhm.
ignited in me something that I wanted to follow as far as my spiritual journey is concerned. Now that I'm older, the pomp and circumstance of practicing the religion of being a Baptist doesn't thrill me as much, and I am trying now to find my path back to that first joy that I had when I was practicing my spiritualness.
Mhm. Now, your wife is Jewish.
Yes.
Okay. So the interesting thing is, so you have like an interfaith household, right? You being a Christian, did you
That's a good point. Interfaith household.
did,
She is agnostic. My children are on their own spiritual path, which I'm, even though, I try to, as they say, teach them in the ways to live, and they'll be able to practice on their own.
Mhm.
I think that I have, but they managed to find their way. And I've had this discussion with both my son and my daughter as to should
Mhm.
should they come in the fold of being a Baptist or find their way on their own. And as Butts had told me one time, that there are many paths to God, so I let them go and explore it on their own.
Mhm. That's pretty cool because when I talk to parents, right,
Mhm.
about spirituality and the spiritual journey, we tend to kind of teach them what we know and what we have learned, but then we also leave it open for them to find their own because a
Mhm.
lot of like for me, for a long time, I didn't go to church. I grew up in the church, and then when I left home, I was like, not church, right? So that
Mhm.
wasn't a part of what I did. I eventually came back as I got older to go into church, right?
Mhm.
And came back with a whole different viewpoint about it, right? And a whole different perspective because my experience of it had me reject the whole concept of, right,
Mhm. Mhm.
Christianity, but that was based on probably the way it was taught to us when we were there. We was like, you
Mhm.
don't question it, you just take it as it is. If it
Yes,
doesn't make
yes,
sense, one day it will, right? You know what I mean? One day you'll get it or something, right?
right,
And
right.
so
Mhm.
I get with my spirit, it was like, really, I can't get with this, right? But
Uh-huh.
now and I studied all religions because I went to interfaith seminary. And with
Mhm.
seeing all of them, as he said, there are many paths. And I see that everybody is going for the same one thing. And it's just called many different things, right? And
Mhm. Mhm.
also, I think the shift for me now is also to not judge Christianity, that it is that. Take it as it is, not
Mm.
making it different, not,
Mhm.
you know, it, that's the religion, right? And I
Mhm.
think when I step back from that and start looking at it as the practice of Christianity, and I love the story of Jesus Christ. The Bible is a great wisdom text. Jesus is a master teacher, all those things, right?
Right, right.
Being able to put that in perspective for me was to not judge it based on the past, based on my experience, based on some of the stuff I read that I was like, really, no, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Put it on, and also based on church people. Like, I'll just say, right?
Whoa, go ahead now. All right, come on with it. I I hear what you're saying.
you
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying, right?
Yes,
And just
I
that
do.
whole experience
Mhm.
of being religious and not being, the whole, it was just, and I think I guess as I look at it now, and I could say it's about really human interaction. When you get a bunch of people together, you're going to get a whole bunch of human interaction,
Yes,
you
you
know,
are. Indeed.
in the name of Jesus, in the name of Allah,
Yes, indeed.
in the name of James Brown, bring them all together, right?
Ah,
You're gonna get, a mixed pot. So what I was saying is based on all of that, my judgments about it and all that, I kind of rejected it. But now I'm actually really studying the Bible, really looking into how it really relates, and seeing all the wisdom that's in there that I can take out and
mhm,
use in my daily life. And that's because I'm no longer judging it, right?
mhm, mhm.
And also, this guy, Waldron at the First Corinthian Baptist
Oh
Church,
yeah.
that
Mhm.
guy is on fire,
Mhm.
okay?
By the way, you know he is a Morehouse man. By the way.
By the way, right? I mean, he has the messages, and I was going to his church some years back, but we had just stopped. I haven't been to church in a while. I started going to the Unity Church on Broadway
Oh, okay.
because I was singing in the choir. I like to
Mhm,
sing in choirs, so I go to
mhm,
this where I can sing. I was singing in the choir there right before COVID.
mhm.
But anyway, for me right now, you know how they say where you're being fed, and he has this great combination of the Bible and life, right? And the way he puts
Oh,
it all together is just such a
mhm.
beautiful delivery of how you can live your life, how the
Mhm.
Bible is the wisdom text. Like my brother is a deacon and he says the only book is the Bible. If you go with the Bible, right? And
Uh-huh.
I not to say that he discounts other books, but believing,
Oh,
how in
mhm.
Christianity they do believe the Bible is the one and only. You go with that, you have everything you need.
Right. I've heard that.
Yeah. So from that perspective, and I understand there is wisdom there,
Mhm.
but at the same time, there are other options in other ways, right?
Mhm.
And that's like we said, there are many paths to the one, and just learning to be open to other people, other religions. Let people be people, you know.
So may I ask that because I'm very curious now, and I like that openness that you're talking about. When you're in a situation where you need some spiritual guidance, where what do you focus on, or where do you go in order to get that guidance? What do you read, look at, feel?
Mhm. Okay, so I've had several different teachers along the way,
Mhm,
right? And one that comes to mind for me immediately is like Esther Hicks, Abraham, she calls herself, and the teachings of Esther Hicks really inspire me, really speak to how I live my life, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
so that's one of the things. And now recently the Bible. I mean, and throughout my life, I've had periods where the Bible was a part of it because I can remember when there was a period in my life where every day I would read 5 Psalms every morning, and that would like get me ready for the day, right? Five
mhm,
different ones, or I would always recite the Psalms 91. So throughout, it's been a part,
mhm,
of what I've done. And as
mhm,
I've gone through and studied, I studied science of the mind, right?
mhm,
The Unity Church, right? Unity is Christian based, but it comes from like a good news perspective that all is
mhm,
good. It
mhm.
focuses on the good, right? So I
Right.
love that from
Mhm,
Unity, right?
mhm,
And for me, I've been in like all different kind of churches, all different kind. Even as I sang in choirs, I was at Reverend Ike's old church, right,
mhm,
singing in the choir up there. I was singing in a choir on 86th Street. So I've experienced a lot of different religions and religious experience, even through the music, because I love gospel music and its singing,
Right. Yeah.
you
Mm,
know.
mm,
So when we talk about spiritual practices. So let's talk about the spiritual toolkit. And the spiritual toolkit, I say, is where you hold all the practices that support you. And we all have our own personal spiritual toolkit because what works for you may not work for me. And so
mm,
you do have your go to things. And I found that as I've been doing the show, people use a lot of creative expression, right? To support them. So I've talked about the spiritual toolkit, and it includes like our traditional spiritual practices. But it's fascinating to see how much people talk about the creative aspects of what they do that support them.
mhm,
So I say all that, right? To say, no, what are your, what would you say are your top spiritual practices at this time? And you know, they change over time because, as I said, Abraham Hicks, I meditate. I'll tell you later about this positive intelligence
mm,
process I'm doing. But yeah,
mm.
let's talk about the spiritual practices in your toolkit.
Well, I think that my toolkit is very sparing. I don't use a lot. I have found one of the things that I have experienced in particularly in attending Riverside Church and dealing with a lot of students who go to Union Theological Seminary and also to the Jewish Seminary across the street. And over the years, I've listened to what they use in order to get in touch with God. Um, but I have not been able to find anything that I could use in what you would term as my spiritual toolkit, other than
Mhm,
what works for me and what has worked for me for a very long time is to go to a very quiet place,
mhm,
particularly when, as they say, when my soul is troubled.
mhm,
Um, I go to a very quiet place to get away from everybody. I try to get into a room, and I just, it may seem that I'm talking to myself, and I know that my kids have, when they were growing up, when they have witnessed me doing this, as you would call it, a meditation,
mhm,
and talking to the Lord, just going to a quiet place and trying to commune and having a one-on-one discussion with God about everything that's burdening me,
mhm,
everything, not even burdening me, all the joys that I've had, all the blessings that I feel that he or she has given me.
mhm,
Just take that time out, and I dare say sometimes it lasts 15 minutes, but there have been times when I've been in there for 2 hours.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
but every time that I have come out of that closet of quietness,
mhm,
I feel better and I am able to continue on my life's journey.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's interesting. When you talk about what practices support you and that whatever's in your toolkit, you know, at one point I thought you were going to talk about, you said, how do you commune with God? Music and singing, like when in the choirs and being there, the impact. I think for me, that was a very spiritual moment. I still listen to gospel music every single day. When we talk about what
Mm,
things I do every single day, I still listen to this old gospel music called Perfect Peace, the old songs, right?
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Wait a minute. Let me write that down. Perfect.
It's called Perfect Peace, Marvin Sapp on Pandora, right?
Oh yeah, I know.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
So I still listen every day to gospel music because it just touches my soul. And it's interesting too when I talk about, spiritual practices and Christianity and all of that, that music still just rumbles and touches
Mm-hmm.
me deep. And
Mm-hmm.
at one point, I wanted to kind of change the words around and make them more positive, but still have that same kind of
Right.
connection. I've always thought of like rewriting some of them, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that it doesn't always come from this down and out place, right?
Um,
But there's just something about the comfort for me, right?
mhm,
I just go to this deep space of knowing that everything is all right. So
mhm,
music is one. So I listen every single day to gospel music. And over the time, it's changed. Meditation. I'm doing this new program. It's a positive intelligence operating system, right?
mm,
And I'm just starting to work on that as a part of one of the practices. But the thing that I like about it in short is that this operating system supports you in the moment, right?
mm,
Dealing with
mhm,
situations in the moment. How do I deal? And it talks basically about our judges, how we judge ourselves, others, and situations. And it talks about the different habits and the different saboteurs, they call them, that we've picked up to support us in being right about our judgments, right? And being right, right?
mhm,
So as we go through life and we encounter situations, right? It's teaching us how to step back in that moment. You don't always have time like to go to that little room you have and meditate. If somebody is bothering me at work, I need to be
mm,
in the moment so that I can handle the situation in the most positive way.
right,
Have some practice. So we
right,
have like these things called PQ reps. It's like a 2 minute moment. And it's the same as when you talk to coaches, people who say, oh, in the moment, take a breath, right?
mhm,
In the moment, do this before, because I can use that sometimes because it'll hit me and I'll send the email before I even think, oh, wait, right?
okay,
So, I'm practicing. So as we talk about the different things, I find that I'm always finding new things, looking for different things, different
mhm,
practices to support me because I'm truly living my best life, right? And
mhm,
I truly choose joy all the time, right?
yes,
And I
yeah,
do not
yeah,
discount that the world is crazy. I do not discount that you wake up in all kind of things all around you every day. Yes, but I
mhm,
choose all the time.
mhm,
And so I'm always looking for support in that. Always looking for ways to support me in just shifting each time because the world's going to do what it's going to do, right?
mhm, mhm,
And how we respond. And that's why I like this toolkit, the spiritual toolkit. I call it a spiritual toolkit. You could call it whatever you want to call it, right?
mhm,
What is it that
mhm,
supports you in just living your best life? That's what I'm about, right?
mhm,
And it's nice to have people on the show. I think about when you say, "Well, Renetta, I don't know. There's nothing in my toolkit," but you have a smile on your face. There's joy. The energy from you is not. There got to be something you're doing, right? You know what I'm saying? And you know what I mean? It's like it's not. It's not coming up as. I mean, and there's so much crap all around us, right?
mhm.
So much, right?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I was when you mentioned music, there is one song that I listen to every morning when I get up in the morning, and that kind of starts my day. And it is Reverend Timothy Wright's "Come Thou Almighty King."
Mm-hmm.
That gets me up and going every day. But one of the things that you also mentioned is in the beginning of my search or of my spiritual journey, there was a point where I thought that I had experienced, uh, and the only term that I can think of is uh, unbelievable joy in my spiritual journey, and I'm always trying to get that joy back that I had experienced. And the only way that I know that I can do that, after I have done my little meditative closet thing,
Mm-hmm.
I try to get out, and from what I have learned on my spiritual journey is to give of my time and service to help those who are in need in any way that I can help them.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that said,
Mm-hmm.
one of the many blessings that I have experienced, the great joy that I have, is my family. When I was growing up, there was no such thing as a real cohesive family. Yes, I had the mother. I did not have a father. I had a grandmother, but no grandfather. I didn't have a brother, but I did have a sister. And it was we're kind of spaced out, and everybody was arguing, and it was a big mess. Not until I got into this religious journey that I was on,
Mm-hmm.
using this spiritual toolkit, as you say, which is music. Now that you bring it up to me, it is that, and the prayerfulness that I've encountered. I have experienced so many blessings in following that and trying to get back to that joy. I know that I'm on the right path.
And that joy is within you. That's how they say you choose it, because it's interesting when we think about it, because we always we look outside. A lot of things make me happy. When I hold my little baby boy, I am just
Yeah.
so happy.
Mhm.
When certain things outside bring that. So when they talk about the joys within you, I think it's like the choice would be in what we choose to focus on, the thoughts
Mhm.
that we keep, right? The
Mhm.
choice, how do you choose joy in the midst of I can't pay my bills, right? How do you choose, you know what I'm saying? How do you choose joy in the midst of I'm so depressed? How do you
Mhm.
choose that is the real question, right?
Mhm.
And I just said when you're depressed, but I like to talk about mental health too, because so many people are really, really, really suffering right
Mhm.
now, right? And
Mhm.
so, and I say it and I laugh, but how do you choose the joy in the middle of a breakdown? How do you
Mhm.
choose that? And so I go to where I really encourage people to get help. Black and brown people, get the help, seek
Mhm.
help, right? And I do understand the order of needs, right?
Mhm.
If I can't pay my rent, how am I going to pay you to talk to me, right? So just not, I say that not to like be flippant about, oh, just
Mhm.
go get help. I say it to say seek programs, seek people. And it brings to mind when you talk about family, you created that family that brings you joy. So
Mhm.
that's one of the things that you created. And family and community are important to all of us.
Mhm.
Even if you can't pay for a therapist, is there a friend, is there a church person, is there somewhere in the community that you can reach out to get the
Mhm.
support? So those are really, really important things for me, is as I talk about a toolkit in the spiritual toolkit, also what resources are available to people, right? What things can we share
Mhm.
with them? and the library. I'm interested in that now, right? Because you don't always think to direct people towards the library. You have the Y and you have community centers, right? But the library as a place where resources, and I know that we've always had at the MEOC, we've always had relationships with the libraries where
Mhm.
we let them know our programs. Those were
Mhm.
the relationships. But I think what's cooking in my mind is like, yeah, the library would have to shift now with the way
Mhm.
technology is shifting.
Mhm.
Oh, I know there was one other thing. Let me see. We have some more time
Okay.
about as an ESOL teacher. Okay, so this was you started in 2016, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
from then, there's been so many things in immigration, so many things happening. Have you seen an impact in, like, say, our political environment and the number of the way the ESL trend has gone, the training?
No, and it's interesting that you say that because I was talking to some of my colleagues a couple of months ago, where one of my colleagues, um, um, the English that of second language that I'm teaching now is focused on technology. So
Mhm,
we rarely get into politics with that, but there is a component of my curriculum where I am teaching civics.
mhm,
And what I try not to do, though it bothers me, when we talk about let's say the White House or the presidency or the Constitution of the United States, and we get into the discussion of immigration. I hear a lot of the students that I have in my class
mhm,
who are very rarely undocumented. So they have gone through the process
mhm,
of getting into the United States, getting the paperwork done,
mhm,
and the only um, drawbacks that they have, or the only barriers that they have,
mhm,
besides not knowing the language, is that they don't have the documentation to get the job that they had in their own country. I have
mhm,
had many students who were doctors, lawyers, chefs, but when they come to the United States, they can't get those jobs because um, they don't have the paperwork, or they don't have, or they, whenever they go for the interview,
mhm,
because of that language barrier, they can't get the job. So um, let me go back by saying that one of my colleagues said that he was teaching about politics, and Trump came up, and he was, of course, he's not a Trump person, so he was being a little negative.
mhm,
But there are some students who believe in what Trump has to say for them, that they believe that he's there to help the immigrants.
mhm.
And I scratch my head saying, how could you possibly believe that? But so I try to stay away from
Right,
politics as
exactly.
best I can.
Mhm. Yeah, it is interesting that I was wondering, even with us, when now they've changed the rules now for us too, where you can be undocumented and immigrant with
Wow.
the MEOC, but they haven't, like, you can't just go out. I don't know how you would recruit for something like that, in a discreet way.
Yeah.
Um, and they are also looking because our enrollment, we need to get our enrollment up. And I'm constantly thinking, because I'm on the outreach team, What is it that we could do differently? How? Because the stuff that we've done in the past is not working anymore, right?
Oh, can I give you a pointer in that? Because I talked to some of my recruiters about that.
Okay.
And they have gone to the the lawyers, the immigration lawyers' offices, and
Mm-hmm.
passed out flyers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In that way, they
Mm-hmm.
have gone to the. I know that there's a Senegalese and there's a Haitian organization, community organizations that they go to.
Mm-hmm.
But the best place to get, well, at least for us, for what my recruiters say,
Mm-hmm.
the best place to go is to the parent teachers meetings.
Yeah,
And
we're starting to do that. Right. Exactly. Right.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, we got to make some new strategies here because we've seen a significant decline, and
mhm.
COVID had a lot to do with it also because
Yes.
people are just different after COVID,
Mhm.
I would say, right?
Mhm.
So you have a whole group of people who now want it virtual.
Mhm.
You have a whole group of people who didn't get a vaccine,
Yeah.
and then CUNY is requiring it, right? You have a whole group of people. I don't know if there's more competition, and also for us, you know how we depended heavily on HRA.
Mhm.
No mandate has come out till very recently, so
Mhm.
we're not seeing the people who are mandated to take training. That's
Mhm.
not the same anymore. So
Wow.
with all of that newness in the way the market is, how are we to be different? How do we get the word out there? So that's where we are.
Well, one of the I have to tap the president of the Queens Library, who's Dennis Walcott.
Hmm.
He has incorporated, when it was time for COVID vaccines, he incorporated a space for people to get free vaccine shots in the library. He
Mm-hmm.
also incorporated where they could get the New York City IDs, so that they have some
Hmm.
identification
Serving the community.
serving the community. So, and he hasn't done it not only in the central branch, but also in some of the local branches as well, where they are in the community.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, well, that's good. That is interesting. As we said, the different roles that the libraries are now
Mhm.
taking on, right?
Yeah.
To be like just to be a part of the community and to be in the community.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. Well, I think we have exhausted our time.
It's over already.
We're
Oh
done
my God.
already. Yeah. So, any last things you want to share? I want you to say, come to the library. No. Any last things you want to share?
Sure. I mean, if you want to explore opportunities in the Queens area, by all means, come to the central branch of the library, 87-11 Merrick Boulevard. We'll be glad to have you. We have from GED to a certification in Microsoft technology. Whatever you are looking for, we have it there. And we have contacts in your community where you live. As Dennis Walcott would say, there is a library branch within 3 miles of where you live. So you can visit a library not only to seek knowledge, but also to get the opportunities that you want and desire. Renetta, Reverend G, it is always a pleasure to talk with you. I learned so much, and it's just a joy to speak with you. And I hope that one day soon, while I'm walking the streets of Manhattan doing the right
You'll
thing,
see me.
that
Yeah.
I will bump into you and see you
Great.
soon.
Well, thank you for joining me, and it was great connecting with you. And I'm sure you will see each other.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
All right. So long.
Bye. Thank you for joining me tonight on Conversations with Reverend G. And I'm here every Monday night live, WEMS Radio, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitch and the WEMS Radio Live app. You can also find me every day on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason. I'm on Instagram as Rev Grenetta with inspirational messages to support you in getting through your day. I will see you again right here next week at 8 p.m. with another exciting guest. In the meantime, live your best life in joy with grace and ease.